All right, guys, welcome in to another episode of the Eurosnob Podcast. Unfortunately, this is not going to be as upbeat of an episode as we all kind of hoped when we finished recording last week, Wednesday night. I think we all predicted we'd be celebrating a little bit, but that is certainly anybody's doing right now if they're any way a fan of U.S. soccer. So to get around to the introductions for everybody that's with us today, as usual, my co-host, Alex John.
What's up? How's it going?
Hanging in there, man. We're all trying to, right?
Exactly.
Also back with us for the third time this season, if I can count, the media hitman, Billy O. What's up, buddy?
Hey guys, how you doing? Obviously wish we were getting together in other circumstances. And somebody has to be the media hitman, you know what I mean? I have to take on some things on this journey and that's one of them. But really frustrating last night.
Absolutely. And unfortunately, I don't know if there's anybody left who hasn't already blocked you, so
There's a couple.
And also joining us on Eurosnob Podcast, YouTube star, and actually, Mike, the Texas redfish hunter himself, Andrew Smith. Andrew, what's up, buddy?
Wow, I didn't expect the whole YouTube star introduction, but
had to throw something in there for you.
oh well, at least I'll get a little bit of a shout out for that then. But yeah, I mean, I wish I was here under better circumstances, but I figured, this would be the perfect time for me to make my debut on the podcast, seeing as how I can sit here and rant to somebody about this absolute mess.
Yeah, there's really no other way to put it. So I guess first thing to do is start off with the game, right? Alex, what's just kind of your quick take on that?
Yeah, the
Let's go to Trinidad game. I'm just really concerned about the other game.
I don't really care about the Panama game. I mean, the Trinidad game is obviously the one that's causing the most consternation today, and I think right from the off you could tell the energy wasn't there. Too much open space in midfield. They had tons of space out wide as well. I mean, we got caught on the counter several times. And it did feel like one of those games where we're going to give up an early goal, and we did on one of the worst own goals I've seen in a long time. And then from there, it just kind of snowballed, and then we tried to pull it back, and the Wonder Boy did his best, but it just wasn't to be. But right from the off, I felt like something was not quite right with the team and their mindset. And it's funny, I actually had a rec soccer game yesterday. So I missed most of the second half, but I had to come back and watch it. So we were leaving the game. We lost 10-1, by the way. So we were leaving the game, and then I texted my friend, and he said, we're not in the World Cup. And I'm like, oh, we must be in the playoff. We're probably just going to be in the playoff. He said, no, we are eliminated. So that was how I found out, and I came home and watched the shit show, and sure enough, here we are, and here I am about to rant with the three of you.
Yeah, Bill, your takeaway.
I got home just in time for the game, and I sat down, was watching it, and in what AJ said, I turned to my wife. I was like, there is no tempo. They look like they're going to just walk this in. It's going to be no big deal. They're going to have an easy time scoring or holding them not from scoring. The own goal was absolutely mind-melting. I thought Howard was kind of questionable. I know the pitch surface was bad in terms of the ball bouncing around to a degree, but it was kind of a performance that looked lackluster from the beginning. They didn't look inspired, I guess you could say, in a cliche way. I thought when Pulisic scored, there was a chance that maybe the Wonder Boy would come back and bring the team at least level, but just totally looked like they fell apart. And Michael Bradley had just a ton of misplaced passes last night. So not really anything positive to say, in my opinion, all around, besides probably Pulisic and a couple other of minor individual plays.
Yeah, Andrew, how about you, bud?
God, I honestly don't even know where to start with this whole thing. I mean, to me, there's a way to play the game, and the U.S. just, especially approaching games against lesser opponents, and I think the U.S. always struggle for some reason, and they struggle on fields like that. And I don't want to sit here and blame the field, because Taylor Twellman in his rant went off about that as well. There's worse fields to play on. You're complaining that it's wet. The other thing is Omar Gonzalez completely to blame for that. That is some YMCA clearance stuff there. That's awful. Tim Howard, 100% blame on Tim Howard. I think the second goal, yeah, that was a stunning strike, but are you sitting here telling me that other world-class goalkeepers cannot make that save? He didn't even jump until that ball was at the 6-yard box, and the guy shot from 40 yards. You're telling me that Howard's not to blame for this? He should have, don't get me wrong, he was an absolute stud in the last World Cup. He saved us on a lot of occasions, and throughout his years, he saved us for a lot of occasions. But it is so clear that he was too old to be out there and playing this game. I blame him for letting those goals in. I blame lackluster defense for letting a shot from 40 yards go out. I blame Gonzalez for poor clearances, and I don't even know where to go. I could rant for an hour about how bad this game was.
Yeah,
I love it.
Yeah, absolutely. Dude, the thing about Howard, I had a couple of tweets last night, which I'm sure got a little bit lost in the firestorm that was Twitter last night. But when you see, I forget who it was that took the shot on the second goal, he was obviously shooting that ball, and Howard was still kind of drifting back to his line.
He didn't move until the ball got to the 6.
Well, exactly, because him getting into position was just so incredibly lazy that by the time he was able to move, because his positioning was so lazy in the first place, it was too late. I mean, the ball was the ball was to the 6 before he even reacted, because his feet weren't set until the ball was in the 6.
And you can't even sit there and blame that he didn't have a view of it. There was nobody with him. 15. There's nobody in his sight. He had a straight shot. He can't say that. Oh, I didn't see it until the end of the thing.
No, it's completely inexcusable. I don't think he expected the shot at first, and which I'm sorry, you should be expecting a shot at any point in time if you're a goalkeeper at that level.
Well, especially with that much open space. That's the thing. I mean, any one of us could have walked into that space. That's how much space was vacated on the left side of defense. And so, like you said, you can't say that Howard didn't have a view of it because no one was in front of him at any point. It was literally just a guy taking a pot shot, and there's no excuse to let that go past you.
Exactly. I mean, and full credit to the guy for hitting the ball like that, because that was a wicked strike. There's no doubt about it, but it's inexcusable that Howard – it wasn't even in the top corner.
It wasn't.
All right. It really wasn't. Moving on from that shot, though, for me, the biggest thing for me that was just mind-blowing the entire time was the lack of effort. It was complacent. It was arrogant. I don't even understand how you can go into a game like that and look like you didn't care. I mean, even if the field was an issue and the ball took some shitty bounces, okay, fine. That's going to happen. But we lost every single 50-50 ball. Every single one. In that situation against a team that had absolutely nothing to play for. That's mind-blowing to me. And that's the biggest thing for me out of that game.
And just one thing that's kind of gotten lost in the shuffle, that wasn't Trinidad's best starting 11. They had 7 or 8 players who were regular starters who didn't start that game. They were down to their 3rd or 4th choice goalkeeper. This wasn't even Trinidad at their best. And Trinidad is the worst team in the Hex. They finished in last. And yet that's the performance you saw. So let's even put it into more context as to what happened. This wasn't Trinidad's stars, if you want to call them that. This was basically squad players that beat us.
Yeah, dude. It's amazing.
That either. I mean, what's funny to me, and this might be a little bit of a weird reference, but teams like Germany, teams like Brazil, teams like Argentina, they make the ball look small because they're in control of it. They make their passes count. And the U.S., for some reason, the ball looks 9 times bigger when they're playing because it bounces around like a freaking balloon. I don't understand how in these games they cannot get this ball under control. They cannot make crisp passes. I mean, I think the biggest cringe moment I had was, I think it was Bradley's corner kick. Bradley whipped in a corner. It was the most floated ball I've ever seen towards the end of the game. And you're telling me that Bradley's our best free kick. I don't think I've ever seen him take a good free kick in my life. There's whipping a ball in and there's floating a ball in. He floated it. It was in the air for like 10 seconds and the goalie just came out and caught it. It makes no sense to me. The lack of crisp passing, the long ball mentality, the floating into the box, and like you said, Ian, just the lack of effort was so apparent. It was so frustrating to watch.
You know, I think for me, a lot of that blame, honestly, the majority of the blame for me has to go on the players. I mean, how much do you think goes to the players, and how much do you think goes on Arena for that team really just not being ready to play?
I mean, for me, I honestly think, there has to be fault on the team because they're playing the game, to a degree. But Arena, that's one of those games, you don't call it a trap game. I mean, you don't think playing Trinidad is a trap game. You think you should be able to at least draw that game, as AJ said, last team in the Hex. But I think a lot of blame has to go on Arena. I mean, he's the manager of the team. The blame always has to go somewhere, so it has to go on him. And I just think the arrogance leading up to it adds an increased sort of angst against him because, I mean, he was making some very illogical statements to the media that I'm just completely dumbfounded by and have been dumbfounded by all day. So I put a lot of blame on him for that because that made it seem to me that he thought this was going to be a walk in the park. And, you really can't have that attitude going into any game, especially against a team that's probably going to want to have some vengeance against you because of last time. So.
And I think it's funny that you're exactly right, Bill. It's funny that you say, the comments he made before the game because, I think first of all, we were all kind of caught up in the glow of the win against Panama and how dynamic we looked and winning 4-0 and Pulisic looked amazing and Altidore managed to actually score 2 goals. And then, the next thing you hear in the media is Bruce Arena talking about wanting to see these European hotshots compete in CONCACAF. Why that is something that needs to be discussed before a game to clinch a World Cup spot, I'm not entirely sure. It goes back to something that I'll get into later, just his own insecurities about the American game and wanting to always make it seem like we're doing something exceptional. But then there was the excuses about the weather, and then U.S. Soccer was tweeting out pictures of like the practice fields where there were big puddles, and it just seemed like there were all these built-in excuses, like, oh, well, we know it's going to rain, so it might be tough for us. There was no professional mentality going into that game. Said, look, we need a draw to get out of here and go to a World Cup. That's all we need. There was no sense of professionalism from the players or the manager, for that matter.
Yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and blame this on Arena. I'm gonna be the first person but it is the players' fault. I'll give you that too. But to me, Bruce Arena, they played at a point where they thought after that win that they were in. They looked over this game completely. Absolutely completely looked over this game. And to me, that starts with Arena. Absolutely starts with him. He needed to come in and he needed to get this team fired up to play. And they were the farthest thing from fired up I think I've ever seen. We can get into his player choices later, but I think that this has to – I mean, it was poor performance all around, but I think it starts with Bruce Arena.
Yeah, and I always have a hard time, like I said, putting all the blame on a coach in that situation. And I think I had the same type of thing when we go back to Arsenal too, and the players put in a lackluster performance and everybody wants to get on Wenger. I always tend to lean towards the players because you know what? There's one thing that you can control as a player on the pitch, regardless of the tactics that your manager set you out on, and that is the effort that you put into that game and the commitment that you show to doing whatever the hell it takes to win that game. I mean, that's one thing that a manager can never tell you not to give. I mean, it's always up to you. And yeah, does he need to do a better job of preparing that team? Absolutely. There's no doubt about that. But these guys are playing at the international level. The international level. Like, I get it. If it's a high school team and your kids are cocky because you're playing a shitty team, I get it. Then maybe you need the coach to kind of to step in. But these guys are playing at the international level, and it's completely – it's just inexcusable on both sides, really, for me. So, kind of staying on Arena, his comments after the game. I'm just gonna read a couple of them real quick. I don't want to take too much time reading this nonsense that came out of his mouth. One of the things that he says right off the bat, instead of he comes out and says that says goes into blaming all his players. He says our center backs are not confident enough on the ball. Forwards were not able to hold the ball, and we didn't get Pulisic into the game. Right after he said, I take responsibility, he goes dumping on his players. He also came out and said, nothing has to change. To make any kind of crazy changes would be foolish. We're building a good system in our professional league. We have players playing abroad of some quality. Who wants somebody jump in and give me your take on that part?
Okay, yeah, I can jump in there. I think my biggest issue with that is the U.S. men's national team should have no care in the world what's going on in the MLS. Yes, the strong MLS makes a good U.S. men's national team, but the fact that his first thing that he goes back to is that he wants to build a strong professional league, he needs to focus on building a strong men's national team. And I think the first thing he said in that was, this is just a blemish. This is a blemish in it's disappointing. This is more than a blemish. This is, like I said last night to you, this is a dumpster fire. And this needs to change. Absolutely needs to change right now. I think it's horrible what he said. Every comment he made, I don't know how he's not already fired.
I said they should have left him in Trinidad, but
yeah, no, I agree.
They should have. And when Andrew was talking about how like the ball looked very big before and it was like bouncing around, and with that statement now that we're reading about what Bruce said about professional league, like when I watch MLS games, I'm not knocking the league at all here. I'm just saying when I watch them, there's a lot more sloppy play, and the quality of passes is very poor, where the ball does look like a beach ball. It looks like it's bouncing around everywhere. There's not really any control. There are some games of very good quality, but on the other end, it's very, very poor to a degree. And I think he's trying to build that up, and you could just kind of see those little parallels there. But to make a statement like that after that game is just you could keep reading them all day, and I'll never understand them for a very long time.
Yeah, that's the thing. He says there's nothing wrong with what we're doing. Yeah. Well, the very fact that we're not going to a World Cup means there's something wrong with what we're doing. And I get that Arena was brought in not to be like a plan for the future kind of guy. He was a stopgap. But the sole purpose of him coming in was to get to a World Cup. And throughout the past few years, all he's talked about is how great our system is, how MLS is producing all these great players, how Jurgen was wrong to criticize it, and how the majority of the national team should come from MLS. And so yesterday he had the squad that he wanted. He had the players he wanted, playing the system he wanted. And if this development system is as good as he says it is, then it should have produced a result, and it didn't. So the fact that he's saying nothing needs to change either means he's got his head in the sand, or he feels like he has his obligation to the higher ups in U.S. soccer to almost dismiss the problem as just a one-off, rather than what I think it's been, which is years in the making of poor development, poor planning, poor coaching, and poor oversight from U.S. soccer.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I completely agree with all of that. I mean, what do we make of more comments from Bruce? I don't have the exact one, but he said that even if we won and we advanced to the World Cup, changes would need to be made to that roster before we got to the World Cup. I mean, shouldn't we be bringing our best team to make sure that we actually get there in the first place? Like, what? If that's not our best side, why the hell are we bringing it to qualifying?
Yeah.
And this is where I got really annoyed, because all we've heard for the past couple weeks is, oh, you know, we need to bring in guys with CONCACAF experience, and we need to bring in guys who've done it before. Newsflash, and I said this last week, the very reason we were in this spot to begin with was because of these so-called experienced players who weren't getting the job done. So then to use that as an excuse not to call in other players, and then to say after, oh, well, we would have had to make changes anyways, why wouldn't you have started this process sooner? Why wouldn't you have started integrating these guys sooner into the national team setup? So that way you can't play this card of, oh, we're going to change the squad once we qualified. Well, too late. We didn't qualify, so we don't need to worry about that part anymore.
Here's my problem. The dude called in Benny Failhaber. Are you kidding me? The guy hadn't played since, I think he had a little bit in 2014. This is the guy who went on the rant about Jurgen Klinsmann. This is the guy who destroyed Jurgen Klinsmann because he was pissed that he wasn't getting call-ups. And we're saying that Benny Failhaber was an option that we wanted to bring in who hasn't played in the U.S. soccer system for years. And then we bring him in before our two most important games in the Hex and then play him, one of the 23, and then he gets minutes. And then all he did was he went in and made a stupid foul. And this is the guy he wanted to call in over other people. It blows my mind, some of the call-ups he made. And that just shows that, yeah, you could say after you lost, oh, I was going to make changes. But at that point, it's too late. He needs to just keep his mouth shut at this point.
I mean, he's obviously already in doing damage control, trying to save his job, isn't he? It's got to be something to do with it. Or does he know?
If he even has the slightest inkling that his job is there to be saved, then you need to fire everyone associated with U.S. soccer right now.
I think everyone in U.S. soccer should be fired already.
They
get to this.
Agreed.
Point.
There's no doubt about that. But did you see his face sitting there at the podium last night? Yeah. I've never seen somebody looking after they just lost in a situation like that.
I don't think his facial expression ever changes.
I don't know, man.
No, he generally looks like a big charisma vacuum. Like, I mean, I think that is his stupid face. But and I think and Bill and I have discussed this too, like the squad selection, just in terms of some of the players that have been brought in. Andrew, you mentioned Benny Failhaber. Look at the Dax McCartys of the world, Chris Wondolowski, those types of players. And Bill, I mean, we talked about this last week. When you saw those names, it didn't inspire any confidence, did it?
I mean, not necessarily. I was feeling like if they were going to get any time, the team was going to be in some trouble. I don't understand why some of these guys continue to get games when there are some younger individuals coming up that, you can honestly give a nice go at and see, where they're going to stand. It was nice to see those guys not have to play too much, but I mean, the result was still absolutely awful. So it just begs the question, how bad did Bruce really not get this thing done? Because I'm with Andrew. I really put a lot of blame on this guy just because of the amount of games he had to kind of get this right. Like the games that they lost in this group play were just ridiculous. A lot of them were unneeded, many of them.
I mean, and while we're on the squad selection, I just out of curiosity went through the list of everybody who was on our squad for the last two games, broke it down by ages, 16 to 19. Basically, I broke it down to FIFA ages. When you search for a player and it gives you that little thing. That's kind of where it got my age ranges. So the ranges were 16 to 19. 20 to 23, 24 to 27, 28 to 31, and 32 and older. Do you guys want to guess what age group had the most players on that?
Probably the latter group, I would think.
Right.
Yeah. 28 to 31 had 10 players. Over 32, there was 8 players.
Wow.
That's ridiculous. That's absolutely
on that
ridiculous.
squad. 4 players between 24 and 27. 2 between 20 and 23, and 1 in the other group. Now, I didn't have the time to go and look at some of the other, some of the other national teams around to kind of see how that compared. But
when you doesn't compare well, I'll save you the time.
I don't think it would. It's amazing. I knew it was bad, but I think that really shows it right there. I think that shows the massive problem with where this program's at.
Here's what I think. Somebody and you guys touched on this in last week's podcast. You guys were on fire with everything you were saying last week. Unfortunately, Ian thought there was no way we were going to get eliminated, but we all saw how that went. But everything else y'all were talking about was just on point. Darlington Nagbe. Dude's too old to be waiting to break out. The dude's who he is. He's not going to break out into somebody he's not. And it comes down to the way we develop our players. And like you said last time, it was by the time they're 22 and coming out of college and they still haven't figured it out, it's too late.
Yeah, and we touched on this a little bit last week, but again, if you guys haven't taken a look at it, Brian Sciaretta wrote an article about the kind of the lost generation, which is, that 23 to 27 age group. And Taylor Twellman mentioned this several times yesterday and today, we've missed the Olympics 2 cycles in a row. And even in that age group, like who's really panned out other than DeAndre Yedlin and Bobby Wood? No one that you can think of that's really come through the system who's panned out. So it's exactly like Andrew said. It comes down to talent development. It comes down to the system. And, ultimately U.S. soccer, and not just U.S. soccer, but, clubs all around the country need to take a good hard look at what they're doing, because there's just no excuse to have that that little, that small amount of people within the 23 to 27. That's the prime of your career. You should be having established stars at that point, as opposed to just 2 players. You shouldn't have all these guys on the back end of their career that you're relying on for one last go.
And here's my question. Would we have relied, if we did qualify, would we have relied on these old players in the World Cup? And that, the fact of the matter is, we would have gotten absolutely manhandled at the World Cup. It wouldn't even have been close. I'm not saying it was a blessing we didn't make it. I think it's a travesty we didn't make it, but it goes to show you how far behind we are. Especially when we hired, I'm going to say it right now, I was all on the Klinsmann bandwagon. I liked him. I didn't want to see him go. There were some faults there, but he was putting us in the right direction. Hiring Bruce Arena put us 12 years behind where we just tried to get to. And it was always going to be a step backward. So my question was, next year at the World Cup, where were we going to be? We weren't going to be in a better position at all. And I think maybe it's better that it happened now so we can fix these issues, and we have 5 years to do it, because now we missed a World Cup with Pulisic, which is awful to me, because I think he could have really used that experience, because he's still young and he's got hell of an upside. He's got more upside than any U.S. national team player I can remember ever, and this isn't the Freddie Adu hype. This is an actual player hype. And unfortunately, he's pretty much the guy that we're going to have to rely on. But he's the only guy we have to rely on. But he put it into his own account. He decided to make that jump and to be that professional that he is. And luckily, there's some players that were 16, 17 making that move overseas to try to do the same thing that he was doing. I think that's the way to develop. It's definitely not the way we develop here in the U.S. It doesn't work. We've proven now that it doesn't work.
Well, let's get into the squad issue moving forward. And Bill, I'll throw this one to you first. Who goes and who stays on the U.S. men's national team? I'm just going to throw out some names. You got Pulisic, Yedlin, Cameron, Wood, Bradley, Howard, Beasley, Gonzalez, Beasler, Brooks, all these guys. Who do you think are the cornerstones of this program moving forward?
I think, Yedlin, I still believe a little bit in Yedlin. Pulisic, obviously. Cameron, I still think is a quality defender, gets plenty of experience every weekend over in England. Wood, I think he just needs a little bit of polishing, but he's in that golden range, so I think he's coming around. Wando's got to go. Bradley, I just think he's just at this stage. It's one of those like, thank you for the service, we appreciate it, but somebody's got to step in there. Howard, the same thing with him. Gonzalez, I would probably say as well. I'd like to see some younger CBs come up. That's just kind of a couple or several of them that I would like to see probably go. There just needs to be a investment in finding some young talent out there, bringing them up, and like you said, in 5 years, getting them ready and set to actually maybe compete and make a World Cup and be able to have a chance to get out of the group.
Yeah, I mean, for me, the only people that were in that team last night that I really ever want to see put on that U.S. shirt again, Pulisic, Yedlin, Acosta, Wood. I think that's it. For me, of those guys that were on that squad, I don't think there's a single other one that I really want to see back on the field for our national team. I think those are the only guys right now in our team that we're going to be able to build upon. Now, we've talked about it before. Look over at some of the young kids that are breaking through in Germany. That's where we're going to see some of these kids come through. They're going to have to step up and do it because we don't have that generation that should be in the prime of their careers right now. And the positive thing for me is we do have some of those kids playing overseas at a high level at clubs like Schalke and Pulisic at Borussia Dortmund. And we have people playing in those clubs and getting some of that experience.
We got 5 years to develop. And if we can't get it done in 5 years, I mean, I think who was it that brought up the fact that Germany 2001 Euros or whatever it was, 2002 whatever it was that Germany just blew up in, and within 10 years, they were winning the World Cup because they hit the reset button. We have half of that. We can be halfway there, I think, in 5 years. But like you said, I think we need to develop those younger guys to where they're 23 to 27, and that needs to be 12 of our players need to be in that age bracket, like you were talking about there again. We don't need 18 players over the age of 27. Was that kind of what you said?
18.
That is unbelievable to me. And I think that shows you where Arena's head at was more than anything is that age selection. I think he did it more for MLS than he did it for anything else.
And it kind of brings up what a lot of us were worried about when Bruce Arena got hired, that he'd be an MLS company guy. He'd call in primarily MLS players. I mean, he even said it before a lot of these qualifiers. He said, I think this squad will be primarily domestic based because they know how to handle these conditions, because somehow rain is exclusive to North America and nowhere else. So, I mean, God bless MLS for allowing us to have players who can play in the rain. So it was always going to be this emphasis on MLS. But, I mean, Ian, those numbers you just said about the age, I mean, that's frightening to me. And at this point, there are so many players that I would completely cast aside. I put this on Twitter yesterday, and it got a good response. I said the fact that Michael Bradley has been an unquestioned starter for as long as he has is as damning a statement about U.S. soccer as anything that can be said, honestly.
I agree with you completely there. Michael Bradley was overrated 10 years ago, and I don't think he ever lived up to what he was supposed to be. Personally, I've never liked Bradley. I've never thought he was the guy we needed to center our team around.
And that's the thing. Like he would have one moment in a space of 4 or 5 games, and everyone would say, "Oh man, look at Bradley showing that leadership." Like he scored that chip against Mexico, and don't get me wrong, great chip. But then he, the next few games he spends most of it chasing his first touch and passing backwards. Cameron, he's getting on the downside of his career. He's going to be a little bit older because, again, you've got to start projecting 4 years from now. So, Cameron's going to be on the wrong side of 30. I mean, Dempsey's obviously done. Tim Howard's done. Beasley's done. God, I hope Altidor's done. Although, I mean, the problem is we're not really producing those strikers. But, Ian, you mentioned guys playing overseas. this is the time to bring him in. The Weston McKennies of the world, Haji Wright, if he does make it through. There's another guy at Schalke, Tataigi, I think is his last name, or something like that. There's another guy, Josh Perez at Fiorentina. Yep. Josh Sargent just signed for Werder Bremen. He's 17 years old, playing for the U17s at the World Cup right now. But, I mean, 4 or 5 years from now, you're looking at a 21, 22-year-old striker, hopefully getting regular time in Germany if all things go well. So Cameron Carter-Vickers, who plays for Tottenham and is on loan at Sheffield United. Tyler Adams.
Miazga.
Matt Miazga, who's at
we mentioned Emerson
Hindman, hopefully if he starts to get game time at Bournemouth.
Adams.
So there are guys that we can kind of pin our hopes on, and that's why I'm kind of watching this U17 World Cup with like a really close interest, because these are going to be the guys you have to build around, honestly, at this point.
Yeah, I mean that's really like you said, that's who we have to build around, and it's kind of crazy to think that we have such an incredible amount of people that play soccer in this game in this country, and that I guess I just don't understand how we could have such a gap in, I mean, it really brings into question the practices that U.S. soccer has put into place over the last decade. I mean, where do you start? I mean, you go pay to play, which I know was brought up by a few people out there. You see that all over. You see, those are just a couple of the real hot button topics that people always jump to kind of blame for that. I mean, do you guys think it's as simple as just one of those things, or is this something that runs? I mean, Bill, what are your thoughts on that first, bud?
I'm sorry, you cut out for a second. What did you say, my man?
Sorry, but basically coming down to the promotion, relegation, pay to play, hot button topics that we see out there all the time as being being blamed for the lack of talent in that age bracket. Right. Do you think it's as simple as just one or two of those things, or does this run way deeper than that?
I mean, I think it's several things. It would take forever to try to dissect and diagnose all of them. I mean, pay to play is definitely something that is a problem. It was kind of funny. I follow somebody on Twitter, and they were kind of cheering against USA winning. And I was kind of like, well, what's going on or whatever. And they were from another country and were living here. And I guess they didn't have the money to play, on the team and whatnot. And it was kind of like, you don't know how many people you're turning away with that could potentially affect a lot of things. I mean, but that's only a small topic. That's like one topic. There are so many other levels that I believe it needs to be fresh to a degree. You need somebody with experience, but it needs to be a fresh outlook, a positive outlook, and one that can try to go across all boards. You have the college system you still have to look at. There's just so many items to think about. I'm not even sure where to start. AJ, what do you think, man?
I think they all kind of go hand in hand, honestly. The pay to play starts at the grassroots level, and I can speak for myself. I mean, when I played youth soccer, being able to play on a travel squad was such a financial investment. It was an investment of money and time, and there are a lot of people who can't afford that. And I grew up, in an area where it was there were a lot of Latino people, and those communities aren't reached by our current system right now, or the inner cities aren't reached by our current system because a lot of times they just don't have access to the game and to clubs and to the exposure. And you're missing out on so much talent at the grassroots level. And then it kind of goes, in connection with promotion relegation. I mean, obviously it stirs up a lot of drama on Twitter, but local clubs being able to move up the ladder and then being able to, maintain investment because owners see a chance to potentially make a lot of money as they move up the ladder, which in turn that money can get reinvested into the club and grassroots development. So, and Ian, I know you discussed this with John Townsend at one point, kind of the benefits of promotion relegation. And, but it is like Bill said, there's just so many different issues at play and it's hard to pinpoint one as the key one, but throw that your way, Andrew. I mean, what are kind of the main issues you're looking at the grassroots level and even, getting towards professional level?
Well, I guess, I don't know. I'll give you a little bit of background to how I grew up. I started playing when I was 3. Ian and I, our families were very soccer related. That's just, our parents did it, so we got into it. 3 years old, I was kicking around a soccer ball. I ended up moving to Germany, and I played in Germany 2 years up on my brother's team, and I was, I want to say 7 maybe, playing with 9-year-olds in Germany. And I'll say this, at that age, we were with a club, and we had our jerseys hanging in lockers. We had someone who washed our jerseys after the game. We had someone who, just the system over there is completely different. They take care of these kids almost like they're professionals in these systems. And then I came back to the United States, and, my first memories of playing soccer really are in Germany in that system. I came back to the United States and I was like, what the hell is this? Because I was playing on practically dirt fields, running around with a bunch of kids who all stayed in bunches and couldn't pass a ball. And it was shocking to me at that age. And then I moved up. I played club soccer. I was on the travels team. I mean, we did heavy travel. We were traveling to California to play in Surf Cup. We were doing all that. I ended up playing college soccer for Division II St. Mary's. And I went through everything. And I can tell you there are so many issues from the beginning to where I ended up that it's almost impossible to fix all of the issues that we have. And I think the biggest problem is we talk about, the pay to play aspect of it. I don't think we have the type of coaches, the type of people who actually know enough about soccer to be able to find these kids at that age. I think our problem is we don't have the people who can find talent at that age. And that's the issue. These guys are being picked when they're 10. And they're like, God, this guy's got a lot of potential. And then they put him into a different system, and then their whole life is soccer. In the United States, I don't ever see that happening, ever. And same thing with Pro Rel. I think it's the system we need. I don't ever see it happening because these owners in the MLS will never, ever even get a chance to drop to a lower league. They own these teams. They have the money they get. They're getting their money. They will never agree, because they would all have to agree about the chance to drop down to a lower division. And that would absolutely scare the hell out of them, and you would never get these MLS owners to agree to that. We're stuck. We're stuck in the system that we're in, and I don't see a way out of it, unfortunately. There are so many issues, and I don't know that there's any one person we can bring into U.S. soccer that can fix them. Fact of the matter is we need to completely just blow it up, just absolutely explode it from the ground floor, get rid of everybody, and maybe even just start hiring people to just drive around and find people, because at the end of the day, that's the only thing we can do, because there's just no way to find the talent here. I think we've dug ourselves too deep into a hole.
I mean, I think the size of the country works against us in that sense, in that you have to cover so many different geographic areas. And, there are some areas of the country which are a little bit more affluent, and those places can attract these types of scouts. But, the kids playing pickup ball in the park, who's got eyes on them? So, I do think that the pay-to-play system definitely hurts our ability to produce, I'm not going to say world-class players, but at least expand the player pool beyond what it is, because oftentimes it's the ones who had to scratch and claw their way to the top. They're the ones with the skill on the ball. They're the ones who show no fear when they're pressed in possession. Right now we have a bunch of athletic guys who don't really have the technical skill needed to succeed at the international level. I mean, what do you think, Ian?
I mean, you kind of touched on it about some of the people that come from rougher upbringings having that enthusiasm and that drive and that kind of attitude on the pitch. I mean, look at somebody like Alexis Sanchez, Cristiano Ronaldo, Lionel Messi. Look where they came from. Almost nothing growing up as kids, right? They dug themselves out of a really rough situation growing up through soccer. They developed that drive that said, hey, if I'm going to make it somewhere and I'm going to really, really, truly make it, it's going to be through this game. So they play every second of every game with that type of attitude. I mean, you look at our players, I mean, there should never be a time when the word comfortable comes into play for anybody at a professional level. I don't care what sport you're playing. I don't care where you're playing it. If you're playing at a professional level, you should never, ever be comfortable in your position unless you're one of the top 5 players in the world at that position. And you look all across U.S. soccer, and that is what you see all through MLS. And quite frankly, that's why Michael Bradley came back. That's why Clint Dempsey came back, because they didn't want to be pushed. What happened with Bradley when he was finally starting to break through at Roma and really make an impact? They brought somebody new in. I forget who it was at the time.
It was
challenged him. Yeah, which he challenged spot. And what did he do? He turned tail and ran home. Check, and was guaranteed a starting spot. And I think for that, a lot of that is the pro rel not having that goes into that kind of attitude with the MLS clubs, because you know what? They don't care. They're still gonna they sit there, they take up their money, and there's no driving force to cause those clubs to change in any way and develop in any way. And I mean, there's no, they don't. They just finish last, whatever, make some money, and then years. I mean, I think that plays a big role into that.
I think it does too. I think the MLS just fundamentally, they're in it for the money. I mean, that's what the unfortunate part about soccer in general, and you look at it at Arsenal, is they don't really care about winning. It doesn't seem, for some reason. It blows my mind. Like, same thing with MLS. They're like, oh, we'll let all the internationals who are really good finish their careers here. Like, the MLS is the league known throughout the world where world-class players go to die, pretty much. And we're never going to get the respect that we want or need, or that will drive us to be better, until we get a pro-rel system. Because until we get a pro-rel system and these MLS owners have to fight for their right to make money in the league, then they'll actually care about developing really good talent. They'll care about bringing over international players. They'll care about building development from the ground up. Because right now, there is nothing that goes wrong with them if they're bad. Yeah, they might sell some less tickets, but they're still, at some point, they're making money. If you put a fire under their ass and say, hey, if you guys suck, you're going down to the lower division, then maybe they'll spend some money. They'll invest money in their in their youth talent, and we'll get some good coaches. Maybe they'll invest in coaches overseas who can bring the beautiful game to the United States. Because I am so tired of seeing long ball soccer. I can't even watch the MLS.
No.
I can't. I absolutely cannot, because you go and you watch these international games, you watch English Premier League, you watch, Spanish League, you watch these other leagues, and it is just so exciting. And then an MLS game comes on, and it's like like you were saying before, it's like they're kicking a beach ball. Yeah. It just bounces around all over the place. Occasionally you get these amazing strikes. You got some talent there. You get flurries of some brilliance, but throughout the whole thing, it is not the beautiful game that soccer deserves, and that soccer is throughout the rest of the world. And that fundamentally is the problem with the MLS. They don't care about necessarily being good. They don't really care as much about development. They just want to make their money, be as good as they possibly can be, and they're okay with going and spending money on old 35-year-old talent from internationally, as opposed to developing their talent when they're 14. And that, until that mindset changes, until that mentality changes, the MLS will always be the league where international talent and really good talent goes to die. That's what they're going to be.
And the only way, you guys kind of touched on it earlier about how the owners aren't going to let that happen. The only chance we have of that happening and then saying, your league doesn't actually meet the requirements that we have laid out to be considered a top tier league under FIFA. So they have the power. They can come in and say, or else we're going to structure everything else to fit that. Really, that's the way I see it. Is the only chance of anything actually happening.
Well, I think Andrew brought up the issue of pressure, and Ian, you mentioned pressure in MLS, and Taylor Twellman brought this up yesterday too. He said, really, like when guys like Michael Bradley come back from Trinidad, are they really going to face any pressure from fans and media? Like maybe for a week and then nothing, and there's no consequences in MLS for failure. And we don't pile on that pressure. But look at two of the names who have been amongst our better players for the past year or so: DeAndre Yedlin and Bobby Wood. Both of those guys came through promoted sides to the top flight in their respective countries. So DeAndre Yedlin played for Newcastle in the championship. He started most of their games, worked his way up, and they got promoted. Bobby Wood, same thing. So you see how those guys learned how to fight through adversity and the pressure that comes with the promotion race, trying to get promoted to the top flight. And Bill, we just aren't seeing that from the domestic players at this point. They just look like they're coasting, don't they?
Well, every time we get into a quote unquote crisis with the national team and the domestic players, somebody said the word comfortability before, and it just looks like it's kind of, hey, laissez-faire. We're gonna float around, not really apply any pressure. Where you could kind of tell with the players that play abroad and do have to go through some adversity because the game is so fast-paced and intense that they actually have a little bit better drive about them. I wholeheartedly agree about the comments on the players coming back from abroad, that they just wanted to kind of take it easy. And it kind of connects why, we were talking about Bruce being insecure because, when you think about it, all these comments deflecting away from something that this thing truly is, because as Andrew said, I really have a tough time watching the games. It's when you get up and watch EPL games every weekend, and you do that for years upon years, and even other international league games, in the Bundesliga and in Spain, and then you watch those games, you can't watch it for too long. You got to watch the highlight reel because it has the best bits, and that's about it. And it's unfortunate to say that, and I don't mean to be snobbish with it, but it's the reality, and the whole system needs an overhaul. There needs to be a different approach to soccer here, or else you're not going to get the quality domestically that other countries produce. And with a country of this size, honestly, it should be pretty relevant. I think our soccer team should qualify for the World Cup every time it comes around. It should be done.
And it's interesting because the World Cup is expanding to 48 teams in 2022. This really was the last World Cup where it would have been any type of struggle to make it. So, I mean, that just, I just found that kind of interesting. But, the thing is, this is the thing that happens when your national team is used as a prop to boost up your domestic league.
Mm-hmm.
and not vice versa, because in any other country, if the domestic league isn't working, or if the domestic league isn't doing their job, the national team doesn't come to a complete standstill. I mean, you don't even have to look at the top leagues. Look at a league like Brazil or Argentina. Those leagues aren't necessarily the best leagues in the world, but they're producing top quality players, some of which make the national team, but others go on to bigger clubs and from there make the national team. So, this idea that, we have to be dependent on MLS to produce our national team players is just a fallacy, in my opinion. Look at Belgium. Belgium is one of the top 10 teams of the world right now. Look at the squad breakdown. They have players in the Premier League. They have players, who play in Spain, and all the other top leagues. The Belgium league itself is not that strong. So
you're so dead on there. Everything you're saying there is absolutely dead on. The fact, the fundamental issue, I'm saying that a lot, but another issue, like there's a lot of issues here. The main issue is the U.S. Soccer Federation owes nothing to the MLS. I do not understand why they think that the U.S. Soccer Federation needs to help the MLS. The MLS needs to help the U.S. Soccer Federation. If the MLS can get their stuff together, that does benefit the U.S. men's national team. But the U.S. men's national team needs to focus on bringing in the best talent. And if that's in the MLS, then great. If it's internationally, then that's where it needs to come from. But the fact that you even have a coach that's saying, I'm going to pick more players from the MLS before even assessing his talent pool, that is a major issue. Because I think that's part of the reason why Bruce Arena got hired, because the U.S. Soccer Federation and MLS are so intertwined that MLS owners want the national team players to play on MLS clubs. Because if you think about it, every World Cup, everybody goes crazy for soccer. Everyone does. It happens every time. And these international guys turn into heroes. They want those heroes, they want them on their clubs. Because whether it's a home club or you're going away, you're going to sell tickets when you can say, hey, our best players are, Clint Dempsey, Michael Bradley, and guess what? They're in the MLS. You could come watch these guys play in the MLS. And that's what the MLS owners want. And that's why they want the U.S. men's national team to pick MLS players. Because at the end of the day, it helps them sell tickets. The U.S. Soccer Federation should not give a crap about what the MLS wants or what the MLS needs. The MLS needs to focus on getting good, because if they get good and they can develop players the way they need to develop, then they can bring those players into the U.S. men's national team, and that benefits everyone. But the U.S. men's national team, the U.S. Soccer Federation, they owe nothing to the MLS, and the fact that they feel like they do and that they want to be intertwined is a joke.
And it brings me to something that, and I've said this before, I know, but the interest of U.S. soccer and MLS are not the same. And that's what people really are struggling to understand. MLS wants the best American players to stay here so that, like Andrew said, they can sell tickets. But U.S. soccer needs its best players playing in the best leagues. Right now, MLS is not that. So the U.S. soccer benefits from its best players playing overseas. So these two things do not coexist. I mean, that's just the reality of it. And Jurgen Klinsmann, for his faults as a coach, saw that and he commented on it. And as soon as he did, the soccer media in this country, which we'll get into later, but the soccer media in this country turned on him, and he could never recover from that. So he always had heat on him. And Jermaine Jones tweeted yesterday, he said something about, he said, and everyone talks shit about Jurgen, 3 exclamation points. Ridiculous, stupid, man, I get too much. I feel sorry for the boys. So I think even the players are now seeing like what Jurgen was talking about. And Ian, I mean, does what happened kind of reinforce what Jurgen said about MLS and the program as a whole?
I mean, and like you said, for his faults, he was definitely when it came down to needing to look for players who were already playing against that top competition. It wasn't, I don't think he, from a place of malice towards MLS or with any sort of, ill will towards MLS. His thing just strictly was playing for my national team, playing against the best competition on a regular basis. So when they do step on the field for the national team, they're ready for that challenge. They're used to playing the game at a pace that it needs to be played at that type of level. I mean, guys at the MLS, they just don't see that pace of play ever when they're playing down there.
I think the issue with, I think Jurgen Klinsmann had a huge problem with the MLS, which is part of the reason why he left, was because the U.S. Soccer Federation and MLS wanted to be coexisting, and Jurgen Klinsmann wanted nothing to do with it. I think part of the reason he got fired was the fact that he wanted all of our big players to play overseas, and he came out and said it. And that was, I think, one of the reasons why they fired him, which makes no sense to me because he was absolutely right in that fact. But they fired him
Sorry, but go ahead.
No, I'm just saying they fired him because MLS wants their players playing, or they want the American players playing in MLS. When you have the national team coach who basically says, no, I want my players playing overseas because those are better leagues, that pissed off MLS, which then probably had all these under-the-table conversations with U.S. Soccer, which ended up they were looking, I think for years, they were looking for an excuse to get rid of Jurgen. And when he dropped the first 2 games, which were 2 of the 3 hardest games in the Hex, they found their excuse. And that's what
I don't disagree with any of that. I don't think he does. My point was that he doesn't want MLS to fail. He wants MLS to succeed, but his interest was not boosting MLS. His interest was building the best U.S. national team possible. That's what where his interest was. And like you said, it rubbed MLS the wrong way, which in turn rubbed U.S. Soccer the wrong way. MLS, U.S. Soccer intertwining. Yeah, 25 years ago when MLS was in its infancy and was completely irrelevant in any way, shape, or form, it needed a boost from U.S. Soccer. It needed U.S. Soccer to help it out. And it was in U.S. Soccer's best interest to get a domestic league up and running. Now, that was 25 years ago, right? It's time for that separation. It's well past that time. MLS is stable enough to run on its own. U.S. Soccer and MLS need to separate, and MLS needs to be there too, not the other way around. So
completely agree.
That's my last words on that part. Anybody got anything else to throw in there?
I mean, I could go on for hours about this, but I'm sure we want to move on to something else.
All right. Yeah, so let's do that then. So kind of going forward with this, we had a couple people kind of throw us a question. Who do we think, who do we see coming in as the next manager? To get overly specific, that it's obviously too early for that. Does it matter to, I'll start with you, AJ. Does it matter to you whether it is an American manager or a foreign manager?
It doesn't to me. The concerning thing is like hearing former players speak today. I was listening to Counterattack on SiriusXM FC on the way back, and Tony Meal was saying, I want the next coach to be an American. I want it to be someone who bled the red, white, and blue jersey and who wore the shirt. And I'm like, first of all, that narrows it down to like 5 people, who are like coaches and have that experience. And secondly, it's not a lack of passion or like loving America that is causing the problems. It's a lack of a tactical understanding and how to get the best out of players. Just the fact that a guy played for the U.S. at one point isn't determinative of anything. And so he threw out the names Tab Ramos and Peter Vermees. Now, I'm not a Peter Vermees fan at all. I think that would be a completely underwhelming hire. Tab I can at least see because I think he understands the technical side of the game, but he doesn't really have tons of experience at this level. In terms of foreign managers, I'm just not sure who you could bring in, like Bielsa. If you thought Klinsmann caused a ruckus, imagine Bielsa and what he would say. I mean, he'd literally turn this whole ship upside down. And I mean, in terms of international managers, I'm struggling to think. And so I'm worried that we go with another American-born, like MLS-bred manager. And Bill, I mean, that just does not sound like an intriguing thought to me right now. And I'm not trying to undersell MLS coaches. I'm sure there's some good ones, but just given what we've experienced, I think you need someone with fresh ideas.
Yeah, I agree with that. You 100% need somebody with a fresh approach. And to even kind of get into this is extremely premature. Because, I'm looking for a total reform here, but with some things, I like Tab Ramos in terms of, kind of knowing the system and being around the younger teams as well as, kind of having a free-flowing philosophy, I would think. In terms of like foreign type coaches, that I like that is actually Tata Martino in Atlanta United. I think that the fact that he actually came to coach in America says something. And it doesn't really matter to me if it's an American-born or foreign coach, domestic. It doesn't really matter to me. They need somebody in here who's going to put in a foundation of this is how this needs to be done. This is where we need to go with this, and this is how we connect it all to kind of rejuvenate this and get some youth back involved in this over a wide variety, not just the small scope that they've had with that pay to play like we talked before.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I agree. I agree with pretty much everything y'all said. The one thing I want to say is I want the next national team coach to be as far away from the MLS as possible. That's what I want. Will that happen? Probably not. As far as replacements, first they need to fire Arena. That's the first thing that needs to happen. Then we can actually start talking about replacements. But I was reading something about David Wagner, who's Jurgen Klopp's right-hand man. I guess he was the guy who was at Borussia Dortmund too, who oversaw Christian Pulisic. That guy, I think that's a guy you look at too, but again, not a lot of people know a lot about the guy. So would they bring someone like that in? No. I think they're going to bring in an MLS guy again, and it's going to make me cringe. And I don't know. I don't know who is right to take the reins, but I hope whoever does just blows the system up. And I hope that Galati goes too, because he's got to go.
Yeah, that right there. That's the most important thing to me. I really don't care who the manager is at this point in time. Find me somebody at the head of U.S. soccer that is going to distance a national team from MLS. That's the first step. Once you have that separation, then you can bring your manager in, because really the manager, we've seen it. I mean, that's why Klinsmann was kicked out. He wanted to go what's not the direction that U.S. soccer wanted to go. So the important part first is getting the head of the entire organization set, and then quite frankly, it doesn't matter who the hell's managing the team, because he's going to follow that lead from U.S. soccer. And obviously, he has to be somebody that's knows the international game and is going to get the team ready and all that. There's plenty of guys out there that are skilled enough and qualified enough to do that. I don't care where they're from. It's just, for me, the person at the head of U.S. soccer, that is by far the most important thing that needs to get set in the right direction here.
Yeah, and Sunil Gulati's kind of been running unopposed for quite a while. I know he has a challenger this time around, but just there's been so many issues under him lately. You had the issue with he had to fire Bob Bradley, then he fired Jurgen Klinsmann, and now obviously the Arena experiment, and then the issues with the women's team and all sorts of stuff. So I think Gulati's tenure has run its course, and I think you do need to start at the top and get rid of him, and and then work your way down. But the question really becomes: is the media willing to put the pressure on U.S. soccer to do what's needed and to get rid of the personnel that don't need to be there? And just the soccer media in general in this country, and Bill, I know you're going to jump in on this because you and I are very similar in this respect, except you're more vocal about it on Twitter. But the soccer media here is so intertwined with MLS. All the preeminent soccer voices in this country are tied to MLS. You look at Grant Wall, you look at Lawless, you look at Twellman, Jason Davis, Matt Doyle. All these guys are really kind of, basically MLS apologists at times. And anytime MLS does something, they need to plug it, or, even if they're commentating a completely unrelated game, let's throw an MLS reference in there. And just kind of throwing a little anecdote in there. After the Gold Cup, a lot of them were very vocal about, oh, see, this is why we brought Bruce in. We won the Gold Cup that everyone brought their C team to, so good for us. And so I saw Rob Stone from Fox had posted something like, oh, whoever doubted Bruce, like, leave the room and never return. And then Kyle Martino posted like that Homer Simpson gif where the guy he goes back into the bushes, and like Bruce haters go back into the bushes, and like all this like stupid talk, premature talk after a Gold Cup. And I had a lot of fun. I mean, yesterday was not fun, but I had a lot of fun digging up old tweets and making sure I reminded some of these people of what they said. And to his credit, Kyle Martino admitted that he was a little presumptuous, and Rob Stone got called out, and of course Lawless's tweets about the U.S. having players to compete with the best in the world. But like, our soccer media here needs to be called out for their agenda. Their purpose is not to prop up MLS. They need to ask the hard questions. Why isn't someone getting on Sunil Gulati and asking, what are you going to do to revamp talent development in this country? Why isn't someone on the phone with Don Garber saying, why can't you encourage your clubs to give young players a chance rather than bringing in old European retreads? And I mean, Bill, you know, you've been, you know, you're the media guy here. You're our media hitman. So let's hear it.
I mean, first of all, to cover kind of a multitude of topics with them, and I'll keep it brief in just a small little list. I feel that even just seeing some of these old tweets that Lawless said about why couldn't Bruce Arena manage Arsenal, you know, another tweet saying that USA was going to win the World Cup, just some absurd tweets coming out. And I think in general, overall towards the players, there is no ruthlessness towards the U.S. men's national team. There's a lot of soft treatment, I feel, and a lot of fluffed egos to a degree by the media. And I just don't think that they criticize to the ability that they should. Maybe not as much as papers in England in terms of criticism, but, you know, maybe a nice happy medium. As for all these Bruce Arena purists or whatever, it has to be some sort of cult beverage that they're drinking, because I commented on that Rob Stone tweet that I saw brought up today. And Martino couldn't handle my NBC Premier Gold Pass or whatever it was tweet, so he blocked me for that. So I didn't see his comment. And you know, Kyle, if you ever hear this, I'm sorry, not sorry, I guess. But you know, just seeing, you know, Rob Stone just be so defiant, you know, like I was like, Rob, like, you're smarter than this, man. Like, you know, it's okay to just say, you know what, you know, that's my bad, I'm sorry. And AJ, I know you told me that Martino kind of did say that, so at least he manned up to a degree, I guess, with that. But I don't get the obsession, and I really think that word, that underlying word, insecurity about what the league really is and where they played and where they made their bread and butter and, you know, what they covered and what got them their start and whatever it was, whether you were a player or in the media. I just think that there's just this mentality to overcompensate how good it is and what it's about, and just anybody that represents it or sides with it is just better than any other option, and it becomes delusion. And Alexi Lawless, I just think, is an absolute fool. Just some of the stuff that he tweets just makes no sense. So media wise, I kind of dropped the hammer on him, and, you know, I don't know, Ian, what do you think? I know sometimes you know, you kind of see where I'm coming from with that.
Well, before you get to that, I do want to give one guy credit, and that's Taylor Twellman, because
true.
I don't know if everyone heard his rant yesterday, but like, he went in.
I'm very happy with what
on everyone. I mean, he went in on Bruce Arena, he went on Sunil Gulati, the players, MLS. He went in on everybody, and that's what we need. We needed a mainstream personality in soccer to finally call people out. I'm disappointed it took this long, but I'd be remiss if I didn't give the guy props. I didn't mean to interrupt you, Ian, but I just wanted to get that out there.
No, that's good.
And on Twellman, he even came out and admitted, he says, you know what, part of this is on me as well, because late getting this message out. I was too late to see this and to say something. So my only hope for that is that pressure continues. So many times you see it, right? Like, that pressure has to stay there. He even said it in his rant. He's like, what's going to happen 3 days from now? You guys are going to stop talking about it, and there's going to be no pressure.
Right.
Yeah, so Twellman was absolutely spot on, and it was good to see some fire out of somebody out there because for some reason we don't see it. I want to address Alexi Lawless for a second. Now, Alexi Lawless says a lot of really, 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 really dumb things. But at the same time, I think he's either absolutely insane or he's kind of really smart. And the reason I say that is because I think he says things to just piss people off and to fire them up. Because when people are pissed off at him, they're talking about U.S. soccer. They're talking about MLS. If he can get people fired up enough, even if they're pissed at him, as long as they're talking about U.S. soccer, I think that's a benefit, and maybe that's what he sees as his benefit. Whether he's actually being the devil's advocate or he's just an idiot, I don't know. But I think there is maybe some sort of method to his absolute insanity. But I guess to go back to Taylor Twellman, I was just really happy with what he said. I think if you, I don't want to sit here and talk about everything he said because you can go listen to the rant and he can tell it better than I can. So if you haven't heard the rant yet, you need to go look at it just because it was on point.
You know, the thing for me about Alexi Lawless, and he has kind of mentioned it. I don't know if it was on Twitter in one of his go-arounds with us, because I know we've had our fair share with him. You're spot on there, Andrew, that there is a method to his madness, and he is all about getting a reaction and starting that conversation. Generally, the focus is on MLS. He knows who signs his paychecks. They all do. The criticism against MLS, just in the way U.S. soccer has been running, why is that criticism not there?
Yeah,
they know who pays them. You know, yeah, they don't directly. U.S. soccer and MLS doesn't directly pay them, but you know how all the media contracts work. That's who signs their paychecks.
So yeah, if
where that comes from.
Yeah, at the end of the day, if they're in a position where do they feel like they can't stand up for us? That's my whole question with that. I don't exactly understand how it works. Like, are they afraid that if they start asking hard-hitting questions to the federation, to the U.S. coach, to see what the direction of soccer is, do they think that that's going to in turn get them blacklisted? I don't understand.
100%. Well, look at your.
I want to jump in there because I've seen that on Twitter from several journalists who claim that when they've asked tough questions, they've had journalistic privileges taken away. They've had passes taken away. Kartik Krishnaiyer, he's one of the guys I follow on Twitter. He's mentioned that that's a systemic issue with U.S. soccer media, that when you do ask the tough questions, you get punished for it almost. And so they're going to keep their lackeys in there who are just going to ask puff questions like, what do you think about the game today? Or how do you think the growth of MLS has really helped the national team? Like that's the kind of questions that U.S. soccer media is asking right now. They're not asking the tough questions. And I'm going to contrast it to two different situations. The Netherlands did not make the World Cup. How do you think that is going over in that country? And even look at Italy. Italy is just qualified for the playoff. They're not in the World Cup. Do you think the Italian media is okay with them only going through a playoff and not qualifying automatically? Absolutely not. They're gonna be all over every single player, every single coach, every single higher up in the program. And the contrast and treatment that we get here when we couldn't even qualify out of either the easiest or the second easiest region in the world it's remarkable to me, Ian.
Yeah, and honestly, the benefit that U.S. soccer has here over the soccer federations in other countries around the world is that soccer is by far not the top dog in the sports media here. I mean, look what happened with the U.S. Olympic team, the basketball team. Was it however many years ago they finished in third place in the tournament? There was an absolute crusade for 3 weeks on every top sports channel about what's going wrong, how do we fix it, and all of that. I mean, of why U.S. soccer gets off relatively easy because going back to Taylor Twellman, like he said, 3 days from now, are you guys even going to be talking about it? And I think he was being generous, because I would bet you that if I was to turn on ESPN tonight, I'd spend about 5 minutes on it, saying, yeah, the U.S. didn't do it. Here's what a couple people said today. The U.S. didn't make it, and a couple people are mad. The pressure's already gone. What, is Fox going to stand up to U.S. soccer? Jesus, they're the worst commentators and analysts on this planet. They put such a terrible product together that nobody can even tune in. Maybe the fact that now that we're not going to be in the World Cup and they're losing out on, what was it, $200 million or whatever their TV rights deal was for this World Cup, maybe now, because we're not going to be there, they're going to lose so much goddamn money that they're going to wake the hell up and actually go after U.S. soccer.
Oh, yeah, I mean, that's a great point. I mean, a great point is the fact that, maybe now something will change. I guess that's what we can hope for. Maybe now that shit hit the fan, maybe something will change, whether it's the media, whether it's, just systematically, something has to. And I think that lack of money is not just going to show in media deals, it's also going to show in the stands in the MLS. I really think it's going to reverberate to the MLS, because now I think the like you guys know, when the U.S. is playing in the World Cup, people who don't give a shit about soccer watch it, because it just rallies people. And I think that, leading up to and after that, it gets people into the stands at MLS. Now, when's the next time that they're going to see the national team play? And when's the next time they're going to see the national team play well? And I think that is completely necessary for MLS to fill stadiums. And I think now maybe MLS will even go, holy crap, we got to do something.
Yeah, Bill, you want to chip in on that one?
Yeah, I mean, that it kind of, I think that's why there's an overhaul that's needed, because it needs to be something where, in my opinion, MLS, U.S. soccer, I mean, I know we want them separated to a degree in terms of what's going on right now, but the plan for the future I'm talking about, similar to what Germany had done, people have been calling for that, kind of like an overhaul that kind of gets everybody on board, at least with the same sort of vision on what's going to happen and how we can kind of develop the youth, get everything going. See what the focus and strategy of the league is, not have the MLS be a breeding ground where good old players go to pasture, somewhere where you can make the league exciting, efficient in passing ability, and kind of culminate all that together to try to get it to look like the beautiful game, as Andrew said before as well. And I just think that until that's done, I don't believe that there's going to be any advancement. It's going to be stagnant, and there needs to be a complete change where we get some fresh ideas, we get people in there, but there's a comprehensive plan that at least in 5 years we'll be equipped to make it, and then in 10 years maybe there's a chance to actually compete for it, hopefully. And that's being actually, I think, a little generous in a 10-year plan, but I think that it could be done.
I think it needs to start at least with a 10-year plan, because it needs to get on the right track after 5, but we need to be back in, like I said, we're taking such a huge step back. We made it out of our group the last 2 times.
Right.
Now we're not even in the cup. And in 10 years, I don't want to just be getting out of the group in 10 years. I want to be quarterfinals, semifinals. I want to be up there.
Right.
In 10 years. And that's where our goal needs to be.
This feels like such a missed opportunity. I think that was my overlying feeling at the end of last night. You have a young, genuine superstar who we in the soccer community know, but was becoming a mainstream star. And one of you had mentioned it earlier, but this was the guy you could have put as the poster boy of your World Cup run. This, and I'm talking about Christian Pulisic, of course. This was the guy that you advertised. This is the guy who would have brought in the ratings. And then, of course, you have all the different subplots of the World Cup, the Messis, the Ronaldos. Can Germany repeat? Like, there's a bunch of interesting stories. But for Americans, and you guys have mentioned this before, a lot of casual fans only tune in every 4 years. You've now lost all those people. Andrew, you mentioned those people would have then gone to local games to see some of these guys play. And people who I'm friends with but are not soccer fans were texting me today. They said, what happened to the U.S.? And when people like that are asking those questions, I don't know how to describe it. It's frustrating because now you see these were people who would have been willing to tune in and give the game another chance and help grow the game here, because the more eyes on the product, the better. And now instead we have this belief that, hey, we're not good enough. We're never going to be at that level. We couldn't even qualify for the World Cup. And it's just such a missed opportunity to continue to grow the game here, because it is growing. Like, look at all of us from different backgrounds who love the game, who love our clubs, and yet we want that to continue to grow. We want to see soccer become the preeminent sport in this country, or one of the preeminent sports. And this is a huge step back. There's just no sugarcoating that at this point, honestly.
And I agree. And I just want to jump in real quick on one of those points with Pulisic. It is a huge missed opportunity, because imagine if we got to this World Cup and Pulisic played like he's been playing. Incredible. And we had that many eyes on a 19-year-old kid kicking ass in the World Cup. And then maybe people look into him. Maybe people go, all right, he went overseas when he was 16 years old. Maybe that inspires some of our kids to, instead of going through our system, then they jump over. I mean, it's such a huge missed opportunity, because now the casual fan is not going to see him until he's 24?
Yeah.
23, 24 years old.
23.
They're not going to see him till he's now, I guess, in his prime, which is good. But now they're going to say, oh, I can, go to college, 22, he's 24, I can be that good when I'm 24. But the fact of the matter is, it starts when you're 16. It starts when you're 10. It starts way back then. But he made that decision at 16 that he wanted to be something else. He could have been our poster boy. He could have been the drive, the start to where development, I think, needs to go for the United States. And it is just an absolute huge missed opportunity that we're not going to get, who I think is our best player right now, and possibly our best player I've ever seen play for the United States national team. And we're going to miss him, and the casual fan's going to miss him at 19 years old. And that's a shame.
And you're spot on right there. How long have we been saying, and I know we've talked about it, and I'm pretty sure it's been out there. Have people been saying what U.S. soccer needs is a world star on the level of, just go look at other U.S. sports, a LeBron James. But, somebody who, when you talk about the best players in the world, that name gets mentioned, right? That's been said for so long. And this World Cup, that was really an opportunity for Pulisic to break through and start becoming that. Now, I don't think that that there's no chance of that happening now. I mean, he could be playing at Real Madrid now and going into the World Cup, and he's already, for the majority of soccer fans, they know about him and they know he's a superstar. And then when the World Cup rolls around, it's like, holy shit, wait, we've got a guy that plays for Real Madrid. I've actually heard of them. Think that it's a complete, like, that it can't happen for him to be that type of an icon in the U.S., but I think the chances of that really being, of him being at the level of an icon, I think that took a major hit, because we are missing those 4 years on it.
I guess let me clarify. I think he's going to be that icon. The problem is he's going to be that icon in 5 years. He could have been that icon next year, and we could be 4 years advanced in development of players that he helped get to that point. Now it's 5 years delayed. That's the point I'm making.
I think it's a great point. That's an absolutely fantastic point.
Yeah, Bill, I mean, what do you think, like, in terms of the overall impact of not making it? I mean, now that you've kind of had a day to kind of let it all soak in, because I know we were texting throughout the day, and I know you just mentioned how angry and frustrated you were. When you've taken a step back, what are your thoughts with all this?
I'm very disappointed. I really think the effect on Pulisic is going to be interesting. I think in the Bundesliga, he'll still probably do pretty well, but there's no chance now for him to truly shine for the entire world to see how good he could have been, especially on a stage such as the World Cup. And like everybody was saying, that kind of practice, quote unquote, almost, that he was getting the experience, I should say, and being able to play so young in the tournament just this next upcoming summer, now having to wait such a long time, basically, as was said, 5 years for him to kind of get in there is a big blow. I don't know what else can be done, because we were talking about the squad before. There's not too many people that you would want to keep. So it's kind of a ground zero approach. And that's why I've been kind of repeating over and over again that it needs to be blown up, because you're really starting from, you know, the lowest level and trying to put the pieces together to make this thing actually work.
Yeah. And you know, this is one of these topics that we could go on for another hour and a half on. I mean, there's really is an endless discussion about it. I mean, kind of go through and get a little bit of last thoughts on this. For me, I mean, we're developing players at a pretty decent rate. I mean, I'm not going to get into the pay to some whatever story for another day for me, but we develop players at a pretty good rate all the way up through 17, 18, 19 years old. And then so many of them just disappear. That's the area that everything needs to be corrected. I mean, is it kids get a chance in MLS? I don't know the answers. Whoever the next U.S. soccer president is, and oh man, if Gulati is still around for another however long, I don't know what I'll do. I really don't. I can't even fathom that being a thing. So I'm kind of already with the assumption that he's not going to be around the next time the election rolls through, which I believe is February. Correct me if I'm wrong. Really, that the emphasis of whoever comes in needs to be placed onto taking those kids who are showing promise, 17, 18 years old, and getting them to the next level. That's the biggest area for me that U.S. soccer as a whole has been letting down. That's the area that I think the most emphasis needs to be put on going forward. Let's get to you for your final thoughts before I keep talking for another 2 hours.
I'm sorry, who? I didn't hear that last part.
You. Go for it, Alex.
Oh, okay. Sorry, my bad. Well, first things first, like, I think MLS needs to take a good hard look at itself and what purpose it's trying to serve. You can be a feeder league in terms of producing good young players, selling them abroad for money, reinvesting in your academies, creating more players. That's what Brazil and Argentina do. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's what the Dutch league does. There's nothing wrong with that. It's not always practical to be an EPL or a La Liga. The problem is, right now, MLS is serving the benefit of improving all of the countries around us, but not improving the national team. You look at Panama, Honduras, Costa Rica, all of those countries have players in MLS. And so the fact that this league exists with its structure, the facilities, those players are now getting the training, the coaching that they wouldn't be getting in their homeland. And so those teams are improving. The problem is, for the U.S., you have our best players coming back to MLS, so they're stepping down in level, and that's showing in their play. So, you know, people are saying, oh, you can't blame MLS for this because 3 MLS players scored yesterday in the important games. And I say, well, that's great, but those teams have improved because of MLS. The U.S. is not improving, largely because MLS is still not at the level it needs to be. So it's kind of not a catch-22, but it's a tough situation. But I mean, just kind of wrapping up, I mean, yesterday it was anger, it was frustration. Today it's just disappointment that we are not going to get to have that experience as U.S. soccer fans in the summer, where all of us band together, watch this team. You know, like, I remember screaming when John Brooks scored that header against Ghana in 2014. that was an experience that I think all of us remember. That's what bonds us as U.S. soccer fans, and we miss that experience. And we're not going to get to see it till at least 2022. And, you know, who knows what happens in the meantime. So it's disappointment, it's anger, and it's time to start asking questions and, you know, ask the right questions and demand answers from people who are in a position to answer them. I mean, what do you think, Andrew?
I mean, you're spot on with everything. I couldn't agree more. It's kind of unfortunate. I think, you know, we should have different viewpoints and maybe we'd get into better arguments here. But we're all pretty spot on with exactly how you think. I guess what I want to finish this up on, and it's something that bothered me just to no end, was the lack of call up of Fabian Johnson.
Yep.
I mean, I think, this is me personally, I think Fabian Johnson is one of our top 3 players in the pool. He is a top 3 player for us. And he called up a 30-some-year-old Benny Feilhaber. It blows my mind. And I think right there is the point that I want. That is everything that is wrong with U.S. soccer right now. And I guess that's what I want to leave it on. That last little point is Fabian Johnson being left off the squad is everything that's wrong with U.S. soccer right now.
All right, over to you.
Yeah, there's just too many variables to talk about. I just want to say that I'm extremely frustrated with the fact that in 2018 there won't be any memories. When John Brooks scored that goal, I jumped in my buddy's arms. I texted him today. I said, I don't have a chance to jump in your arms next year. You know, and I was kind of having to explain to him because he's more so a football guy of what was going on. But I think, you know, in summation, it needs to be blown up. I think the media finally need to look themselves in the mirror. I just think everybody kind of needs to take a look. There needs to be a fresh start. Salati's got to go. Arena's definitely got to go. I'd like to see him walk off a plank somewhere, chewing that gum that he likes to smack around on the bench. And I really think that it has to be freshened up. I'm sick of seeing promise, and then there was this agenda against Klinsmann. And I know as a coach, we could use the word subpar to a degree. I don't know. I just think that they went in the wrong direction. It showed with this result. Grass isn't always greener. And it's time to reseed and grow something new. That's where I'm leaving it at.
Yeah, and kind of just to add on to those points, guys, you know, you talk about in 2014, I was at a bar, John Brooks' goal, and there is this old guy, probably in his 60s, was there with one of his buddies watching the game, and I was talking to him, and he says, honestly, I've never watched a second. And that guy's reaction when that John Brooks goal went in was absolutely insane. He was jumping up and down and jumping in people's arms as energetically as anybody else in that bar. And you guys put it perfectly. That's the kind of stuff that we're missing out on.
I think
next summer.
I think I was in Hooters when that goal went in, and it was quite a good place to be, I think, with people.
Yeah, I would imagine that would be the case.
I was going to say, if you're going to jump into someone's arms, that's probably the place to do it, right?
Yeah, I was at the wrong place, apparently.
We're jumping into all right, we're not going to go there too far. All right, guys. I do want to give Andrew, I want to give you a chance to stuff that you're doing, man. We really appreciate you you coming on and spending some time with us here tonight. So take a couple minutes and, you know, throw a plug out for what you got going on.
Oh, I don't think I need a couple minutes. You know, I've been so frustrated with soccer lately, with Arsenal and U.S. soccer. I've been doing a whole lot of fishing. So I'm an outdoors guy. I have a YouTube channel, Texas Redfish Hunter. You can go check it out if you like the outdoors. I've got about almost 18,000 people on YouTube. So come be one of them if you haven't already. But that's about it.
All right. Well, hey, that works for us. Alex, I'm going to let you kind of run through where to find myself, you, and Bill, because you've got our Twitter handles down better than I do.
I was gonna say, like, it's become second nature now. I know you can find Bill at AFC Gooner O. You can find Ian at Gunners Fan 6. You can find myself at UF Gooner AJ. Find the podcast at Eurosnob Pod. Facebook.com/Eurosnob Pod. And seriously, guys, if you like what we're doing, retweet, share it, whatever verb works, do that and just spread the word. And the more people we get into this, the more people we can engage and get on here. And so that's ultimately the goal, is to reach as many voices as we can. And I think today's is definitely a good example, because even people who don't follow soccer are talking about this. And so certainly spread the word and provide us some feedback on things you might be interested in hearing about.
You guys, and what's up? Go ahead, man.
I was saying, do I need to jump back on the Twitter game? Because I've been off that train for a while.
You might need to.
Yeah, that's why I didn't throw it. I didn't throw Twitter your way, because I haven't seen you on there in a while. So if you want to throw something out, go for it.
Oh, you know what? I'll get with you, Ian, and I'll maybe set up a new Twitter account that's solely dedicated to soccer, because I had fun. I had fun on the podcast. Thank you guys for having me.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, it's been a blast,
man. All right, guys.
Yeah, thank you, guys.
Unfortunately, this was no problem. Unfortunately, this was done under terrible circumstances. There's really no other way to put it. Hopefully, back up. Is anybody else? Hopefully, you guys, somebody has some faith in that. We could use it right now. Come through, because I can tell you that I don't have a single team of mine that is doing anything well right now, and
that's why I'm gonna say it. I'm all in on the Las Vegas Golden Knights. So at least
dude, they're killing it right now, man. 3-0.
So there you go.
And my boys are 2-1, and the Bills are, all right, we're not going there. Guys, thank you so much for tuning in. Like Alex said, share, like, subscribe, whatever, comment. And, tune back in next time. We'll be back on Arsenal, but as stuff unfolds with U.S. national team, expect to hear a whole lot more coming from us. So again, from all of us, thanks for tuning in, guys.